You guys are so much fun. So here's another thing that we did, which was kind of fun. Back when there was a discussion about Conan O'Brien and Jay Leno, and Conan was going to come in, and there was going to be this battle, Leno versus O'Brien, for late night television. Second place behind Letterman, but that's another story. The notion here was we went out and we did some basic studies to understand who Leno and who O'Brien appealed to. Not surprisingly, if you think about who they are, how they act, the kinds of humor they use, etc., they had fundamentally different audiences based on the behavioral profiles of the people who were watching. Okay? It was very clear to us, and this is not hindsight, it was while it was happening, we looked at it and it was very clear that the audience that Leno was attracting and the folks that were spending a lot of their time with him was a fundamentally different audience than the audience that Conan was attracting. So by thinking about, we're going to move him into a time slot so that somehow Leno viewers would switch to Conan, they were fundamentally different kinds of people. And their affinity for certain kinds of humor, certain pace and the way in which those shows operate and run, how guests are treated, the kinds of conversations that happen, the familiarity people have with this style versus that style, the expectation that we had and the industry had about it's a one versus one, it's Leno versus O'Brien. The reality is that was the wrong question, because those people had differing appeals. So the question really was, what audience do you want? Not in terms of total numbers of viewers, but what audience you're trying to reach. Because Conan and his style and his show reached a fundamentally different audience than Leno and his style and his show. So head to head, they weren't necessarily even competing for the same audience, because they have different audiences, but you'd move things around and you change people's patterns. It was a high risk situation and unlikely to actually naturally occur, because we understood that there were fundamentally different audiences that these two human beings appealed to. Why are some celebrities very successful? How many celebrities actually cross? Why is country music such a niche? Well, it happens to, believe it or not, appeal more so to a certain segment of the population. And this is not a segment of the population based on demography or financials or anything else. It's based on how our input senses work. We want a very concrete, clear, simple message if our brains work in certain kinds of ways. If they work in other kinds of ways, we want more complexity, more abstraction, and understand it in a different way. And it is just one of those things that many of us in the industry, particularly in the research industry, have always understood. And it was always difficult to get our brand people, our creative folks, to understand that you are not the world. And when we go out and test this, and test the copy, it comes back and it doesn't necessarily have the desired effect, in part because the audience you're trying to reach doesn't respond to it. That makes a hell of a lot of sense now with the comprehension I finally get from looking at the Xyte profiles to understand there's a reason why different strokes for different folks is in fact truth. It's the nature of the world. And the Xyte profiles really give us an opportunity to better understand what's going on. And the really exciting thing about it is it does offer the opportunity for a predictive approach here. Because we do understand and can look within a category, within a brand, and begin to comprehend, here's how the world of purchasers of your product today fall out. So there's certain segments within the profiles of Xyte that are your profit customers. These are the folks, remember the 80-20 rule? It's real. These are the folks that are in your segment and they are buying your product. That tells you something about the kind of messaging either that has been working or could work in the future to further solidify your base. It also says to you, these are the folks that aren't currently buying your products, and there may be reasons within your marketing approach that are the natural outcome of what you've been doing. You know, there are very few products that are truly ubiquitous as a brand. Even toilet paper, okay? I mean, the fact that only 99.9% of people use or buy toilet paper based on old IRI data just always cracked me up. But the fact is, everybody uses that, and yet there's this proliferation of brands. How can you understand the difference between brands? It's not just price. Well, guess what? We've done some work, and the case study there, even in that category, which is a traditional way that's like, it's a commodity. People just buy on price. They don't just buy on price. The folks in that category understand that, but do they really understand it to the degree that there are definitive profiles between brand A and brand B? We've been able to understand that. We've got some case studies there that I think will provide a lot of value to the folks in those categories to look at a different way to understand why consumers behave the way they do.
And Larry, would you agree that those brands have they appeal to different types of people because of the way they're advertising to them already? I mean, yes, we see that the profiles are different by brand within toilet tissue or bath tissue. However, would you agree that it's driven by the messaging and the media that they have been using in the past? That's really what's formed who appeals to those brands.
Right. There's an interesting thing that goes on when we go and investigate a category or a brand. There's the classic chicken and egg, right? Are the brand preferences we see portrayed when we profile a category and brand based on something other than what the messaging has been for that brand or category throughout its life? Guess is, you know what? We, in the industry, have somewhat created the brand preferences. I like to think advertising works. We've helped to influence those brand preferences in ways that were intentional and ways that also were kind of just the outcome of producing copy in such a way that it had differing levels of appeal to differing profiles of people. And obviously, many brands understand this already because they create one set of copy with this kind of message, and another set of copy with this kind of message, and another set of copy with this kind of message. Geico is a great current example. Now, they've done that based on their own research and understanding and comprehension of the market. Turns out it's a very smart way to do things because they want to appeal to the broadest possible population because everybody can buy car insurance, but they're actually delivering different messaging. So when we take a category like toilet tissue and take a look at it, over time, different messaging has been delivered. Therefore, brands do segment in interesting kinds of ways. And the question for the marketer then is, if this is my reality, am I happy with it? Do I want to try to alter it? Are there large groups of population? For instance, in the Xyte profiles, it's not evenly distributed. There are certain profiles that have more human beings within them, a higher percentage of the population than others. If I happen to have great appeal in, say, 27% of the population, and I'm really underrepresented in 40, might I not want to think about how could I talk to these people in a slightly different way, still consistent with my, whatever you want to call it, my unique selling proposition, my messaging, my brand promise, all those kinds of things. Perhaps there's a way to tweak the way I'm speaking so that I'm better heard over here, right? And that's kind of the art behind this. We talk about Xyte as predictive. That doesn't mean that we will prescribe for you precisely what it is that you need to do. What we'll be able to tell you is if your desire is to reach these folks for whatever reason, the way and the method and the design of your messaging, if you take certain things into account, your opportunity to better influence those people, to better be heard, raises. And it's still, if it's crappy creative, it's crappy creative, right? But if you get the right message delivered in the right medium, by that I mean the context within how the advertising works, the way in which you speak, the words that you use, the music, the lights, the camera, the action, all that stuff, there is a definitive difference in terms of preference for certain kinds of messaging, copy, and it has to do with the way we comprehend the world around us. And you know that that's different by person. You intrinsically, forgive me, in your gut, you know this. But now I can see the proof. Now I can actually look at what we're learning by using the Xyte profiles and understanding people better to really say we now have a way to truly understand how people are perceiving what we're trying to get them to understand and perhaps change that or influence that. And I got to tell you, the thing that's most exciting to me about this, or one of the things that's most exciting about this, is if advertising and if sharing of information, which is what I really think advertising is, in its purest form, what you're trying to do is tell somebody, here's something you should know, here's something that, if you like this, or if you want to try this, here's why you should try mine. If that is created in such a way that people are more likely to be content in receiving it and engage with it further, what happens? Advertising becomes less thought of as intrusive and interruptive and more thought of as a medium for communication. No customer wants to spend their money, their effort, their treasure, risk their stock price on creating products people don't want. All right? So if I've got a product that I know people want, because I've done some research testing and everybody loves the taste of this, but I can't seem to get people to appreciate and understand, well, perhaps I'm saying it in a way that the people who are most likely to want this particular product, just it's going over their head and it's missing them and they're not understanding. Therefore, you're reducing the likelihood that you'll break through. People will understand what you're trying to sell them and they won't try it. If you, in fact, have a messaging and a communication strategy that is more in line with what the people that you're trying to reach would like to hear, doesn't that make it an easier process for the communication to occur?